And so the issue came up vis-a-vis the motives for going through life in one fashion and then in certain ways gradually transferring attention to other issues, less from a personal satisfaction with aesthetics and the development of the intellect, and then more in terms of an awareness of social issues, and especially at first economic issues, which were extremely relevant to the question of what sort of world it was in which we lived and what it could become. That's exactly the idealistic bent that is typical of an actually spirit-born being, because they're not going to be satisfied with the status quo or the concrete and demonstrably corrupt and inferior forms of a republic or of a world in which they live. They simply can't do that. The Promethean spirit within them would not permit that kind of lifelessness. But those without it, the living lifeless, as it were, simply exist for the sake of accommodating a hierarchy of coercive individuals. Now this right here is called briding. They're going to keep doing it because there's no one here to boot them or notice that they're doing it. They're not going to park because they already know they'll get booted, but they want to bright, so they pull in and then they pull back out. This is part of the gang stalking activity of the cowards that I'm talking about. They wouldn't do that unless they were going to park when the guy that boots the cars in this parking lot was here. Now the ones doing this don't stay. It's possible that they fear they might be booted, but no one did that before. So now that there's no witness here to see what they're doing so I can point it out, then they want to do it because it exaggerates the sense of, hey, you're alone, we can stalk you. Guess what? You can do that at your own peril if that's what you're doing. And you better do it at a very good safe distance, because you're technically committing a felony in my presence. And if it turns into something hostile because of your aggression, and I haven't forced to defend myself, and I think it's a life-threatening situation, I'm going to make you regret it. For sure. Minimum. As for me, in my changing gears from an aesthetic to a more logic-oriented perspective, that comes with the development of faculties as you're growing up as a teenager, and you're maybe overcoming some side effects of all the vaccinations you got, and how it might have affected your brain early on in its development, so that you might have incurred some, who knows how many people are on the autistic spectrum now because of all the vaccination that's going on, and the intensity and the increasing severity of its poisonousness. So yeah, and whatever they're spraying in the chemtrails, and plus the new form of sodium fluoride, which is really a different chemical, hydrofluorosilicic acid, the psychotropics, which are now in the water because they're not filtered out in the sewage, and also in the basically being disseminated as a false form of medicine, both as a prescription drug and as an illicitly taken prescription drug on the streets. That's going on. And then you have psychotronics, you have many other factors which come in and can mold people's minds against the grain of their own better judgment, if they had better judgment, let alone if they didn't, which is the case of the physical man, or the man of clay, who gets his directives from fear of bodily harm and hope of satisfying his body in some way. And that's what motivates him. And therefore he'll jump into one of these covert fifth column programs like a coward at the drop of a hat. All you got to do is sweeten it for him so that he is in effect looking the other way by not telling him exactly what it really is, and making sure that there are some incentives that go with it. That's That buys off a lot of people, and they just join these programs without knowing, hey, here's something on your cell phone that tells you go here and then cough. Or hey, keep an eye on this app because it'll give you a signal whenever you're within 100 feet of a place where if you cough, you get some, I don't know, I'm just going to speculate, certain types of clothing that you see are popular these days. Maybe you get a discount there. Hey, you're doing a great job defending your country by playing a game of Pokemon where instead of doing the Pokemon feature, whenever you get to a certain grid coordinate, you pretend to cough. Sounds great. And then you can create a signal for it that becomes automatic for you so that, like a ringtone, it tells you exactly what to do when you get to a certain position. And if you just do it, it somehow monitors whether or not you've done the act, and then you get sponsored with some type of incentive. Maybe the incentive will be, coupons or discounts at certain places that I mentioned in the Covert Fifth Column series are front companies for this kind of activity. Or maybe there's a black market clearinghouse for that sort of stuff. Either way, it's a crime. It's a racket. It doesn't matter what you think it is. It's a racket. If you don't understand that that's a racket, you're an ignorant punk that should not be allowed to vote. So now those who are involved in it are not honorable people. What they're doing is wrong. It's a criminal activity. If you think someone is a danger or a risk to society, you do not succeed in making your community safer by harassing that individual. So that one, if you're claiming one of those, the other one has to be absent. And that is, if you claim that they're a violent person or someone at risk of violence, I don't know how you prove that legally, especially if you're lying about it, or if you're just making the presumption, singling someone out for that special treatment covertly, then you put them on a list, and then what you do is you have people go around playing these little games of psychological warfare. Then you are a goddamn fraud. Because that's the worst way to make people safer around someone like that, is to encourage them to deploy tactics which can only be meant to harass a person. You are fucking idiots if you believe people who tell you to do these things are in some way assisting the community and making it safer. You're full of shit. And to do such childish pranks for that purpose makes no fucking sense whatsoever. It's not your job. There is an entire network of individuals employed by the federal government for that task. You can't possibly fucking believe that they need your help to accomplish it with today's technology and their thorough records on everyone in this country. Get out of here. You're a moron. You know better than that. You know you're just using these programs in order to facilitate your sense of power and control in a certain local area where you think of yourselves as little rulers of your little fiefdoms. That's all it is. And I've seen your arrogant butts walking around acting like the public space is your own little personal thing that you own and control and have the right to take care of. And you're pompous, arrogant jerks and perverts. And I've just told you the truth about yourself, whether you like it or not. The other thing is, to do it under the false pretext of making the neighborhood safer or the community safer or better is a complete fraud and a racket. And for people to buy into that shit is insulting to the intelligence, to think these people deserve respect. They're cowards, and they're sadists, and they're punks, and they're criminals. Miscreants. So that going on singles you out as the frauds and the wrongdoers and the ones making the community less safe. and it singles you out as the persons that need to be watched and monitored. You're the ones up to no good and doing things covertly and for false reasons, and in support of those who behind the scenes have a completely different agenda or are going to naturally be prone, because of the ego-serving nature of bureaucratic roles in any kind of social program whatsoever. They're going to naturally tend to want to use this as their own little whipping prod or cattle prod or some other type of instrument of abuse, their threshing rod, in order to bully others. But most of the time, frankly, you're not even bullies. You're just weak-willed, fearful, uncreative, arrogant people who feel insecure and use this type of a program simply to make yourselves feel that barely much safer. You're such a picayune group of people, from what I've seen. And then those of you who have families and think of yourselves as respectable professionals and even have some creditable attributes to your person who are engaged in this, you're frauds too. You don't get special treatment because you think you have a high-minded reason for what you're doing, which is a crime. It doesn't matter if you do it with a feckless iron glove or with some kind of false sense of compassion and a velvet glove. It's the same fraud. And that activity is what's corrupted society and is destroying the mentalities of the youth at an exponential pace. And you suckers are the cause of it. So I'm not taking moral judgment from you. And if there's a reason for an apocalypse, it's because most of the population is already spiritually dead. You can thank yourselves for that. You know, just from that vantage, one doesn't come into the world knowing about horrors like that, natural or otherwise, let alone as technologically vamped up as they are now. So of course, naturally, there's going to be a divergence between idealistic expectations and projections upon the world and what it turns out to be. But even that has a certain natural set of, well, reasonably accommodatable features for the human mind, nervous system, and their composition with a soul, if any, given that the status quo of culture can provide a certain amount of rationalization for events and fill in the mind with the type of narratives that assisted in coping in those ways that an idealist would project upon readily. So in other words, it acts as a sort of manipulative token propaganda system in order to make sure that people feel as though on some fundamental level everything's on the up and up as far as the good faith of the community. But whenever this type of fraud is being conducted, and when it's being conducted with this type of intensity by these means, it exponentially destroys that pretext, and that pretense loses its validity to the same in direct proportion. So naturally, to come and to witness that, which represents, of course, the Enlightenment counterculture to tyranny for the last few hundred years, and from spiritual bases of authority in different places in history, which signal large, epic, creating movements of people and ideas and culture because of those transformations of faith or belief, religious or otherwise. It's because of that process. I'm not going to give you any advice about it, man. Just make your own decision. Someone's asked, hey, I'm done talking. I'm in the middle of a conversation here. So basically in that circumstance, if people are acting in bad faith, then they're going to be recognized for doing so because of incongruities in their conduct with what is expected by a certain norm that people have come to internalize. Those are the mores of the culture. If people act out of parity with that, people all judge that and experience that as an impropriety. Everyone, no matter who they are, recognizes a certain set of norms with regard to propriety, personal space, common sense, people taking responsibility for their own actions, people not crossing certain boundaries which are actionable at law as well as by natural force and common law. So certain conduct, which some of which I filmed, and then there's much that I haven't filmed, or much that I filmed that I haven't shown, implicate certain types of people with misconduct, which equates them with being wannabe thugs, and they need to be arrested and put in jail, period, till they learn how to act out here. Being engaged in those programs and using them as a fulcrum for gaining some advantage or perceived advantage in society, even if it is relief from a sense of one's own fear and insecurity, is not only a crime, it is a misdemeanor of conduct that extends down into the soul of a person, if there is one. Now, people who do not have a soul, that would be contemptful and disgusted with that kind of conduct and who would readily engage in it, therefore, are the common specimen of human being. I would say about 60% of them minimum throughout history. But it's even worse now, judging by how many people are participating in these programs and how young they are, college age. I mean, it's just an observable fact. There are so many ways to demonstrate it. That's corruption of the youth. That's what you are all doing. You're doing that to your children, and you're destroying the fabric of society that makes a tolerable coexistence of people possible. You're destroying that. That's your fault. You've done that. You deserve the judgment based on your conduct that you're receiving. Not because merely of how I feel about you or what you've done to me, though that also condemns you. You're trying to gaslight people. You're trying to convince them that they don't know what the status quo of the mores are, or what norms are, cognitively and ethically. You're creating double standards. You're incentivizing misconduct, and you're running rackets because this stuff has been decentralized for the purposes of fomenting social control for those who supervise the entire system. All these little compartmentalized wannabe control freaks down here on the local level are nothing more than sycophantic dependencies on what is tantamount to a psychological warfare operation. That's it. That's it, and that's all. It doesn't matter what you say about it. And instant communication is being used to supplement it in ways that are obvious, easy to figure out, easy to reverse engineer, easy to conceive, easy to understand, easy to use, just like the systems themselves, okay, and all the other applications on them. So let's not even pretend. I see it happening. I've been seeing it happen. Reason why I'm not included in that program, first of all, they know it's beneath my dignity, and they knew that I would be insulted at the prospect, and I would then therefore know about it and be a danger to their program, because it depends on being deployed covertly toward anyone who is not included in it. That's the B system. There's your B system right there. Your agreement to do it and your decision to take actions based on your own judgment in conjunction with that program is the mark of the beast on your head. That stupid fucking cell phone in your hand and the wheel of the vehicle in your grasp and under your control, or any other thing that you do with your hands, any action you take, including working, going about your business in any other way, in public, if that is in any way used in conjunction with this kind of fraudulent program of coercion, then to that same extent, you have adulterated and devalued and degraded the credibility and honor and value of your social conduct to the extent that it's not this program. Because you've used it as a cover and an instrument of extension of that program that makes you a witting, aider, and abettor of fraud and coercion. You are subversive to society, and you're subversive to the republic upon which this society happens to depend, according to the Constitution. You are traitors to the republic, to the Constitution. That's literally the case. I can make that case in court and have all of you recognized as criminals for that conduct. And that's way more severe than any piddly crap you think you've got on me. I guarantee you that. And on a moral level, it's 10 times more severe than that. So therefore, what makes you think you have the right to expect me to be positive about the outcome of your pathetic world? You don't. My better judgment tells me you're fucked. And so that's what I've said. Doesn't matter if you like it. So you can give up trying to play the psychological warfare games if you expect it to change that, because it won't. People's destinies are a consequence of the moral validity or invalidity of their actions. And I have spelled out to you what's fucked up about what you're doing and what the severe consequences of it are. So you can stop talking under your breath about how arrogant you think I am, or whatever else you think it is about me that I shouldn't even have to overhear or give a damn about, because why should I? Look what I've just shown about you and your fake society. You're running a racket, plain and simple. It invalidates everything just like it ever invalidates anything. There's no exceptions to that. What do you think the Protestant Reformation was built upon, except saying this very thing to the papacy? You don't understand your own religion if you're a Protestant if you don't get that. Your racket makes all of your conduct and everything into which it is admixed and with which it is adulterated fraudulent, because you're using that now, those roles in society, those offices, those instruments and materiel and methodologies and technology in specific cases as adjuncts to your misconduct, your fraud, your racket, your coercion, your cowardice. And thereby you have you've weaponized the entirety of the human social fabric into a completely corrupt, dead entity. There's your beast, there's your grand falloon, and there's your hand in it. Mark on your head and mark on your hand. There's your induction into the beast system. You think you have to wait for somebody with a hypodermic needle to put it under your skin? It's already under your skin. With your coughs, with your yawns, with your little tailing techniques, and your little can you have a light, your probing bullshit questions, your worn out, pseudo plausible stories and narratives, your street theater, your egotistical psychopomp. Everything that you're, this bullshit game that you're trying to play, it was already disgusting and despicable to me when I saw it at the beginning before I had any idea what it was. Just like the spirit behind it was, which was why my reaction to the world at first was one of a separation from it and an idealization. And then that's why whenever it reached a certain point, it had to reverse polarity in an extreme way, because the framework and the basis for that was laid by taking seriously the things that to which you paid lip service to and did not mean. Because you have the spirit of Epimetheus, the liar, the superficial, the bodily man, the man of clay, the Hylic man. Those who have had the will to elect themselves the leaders of this bunch spiritually, and in many cases, and perhaps most cases secularly, are basically the psychic men refer to, who are the hosts of demons. Because what you do aggravates it by an entire dimension beyond what was naturally occurring before. And then with the technological modifications now, which have exaggerated it to a further exponential degree, you basically wrote your ticket to hell yourself. That's exactly where you're going. You know why now. You can't pretend you don't know. I just told you the whole scoop. Do you see me handing out pamphlets or putting up cryptic stickers about it? Told you and the whole world about it. And I explained every detail of why. It's the truth about this world. That it hates to hear, that it doesn't like, but it's there. It's in your doings. You are bearing the fruit that I wrote about in the last blog article, to which there is a link in the description below. You are the ones I'm talking about. You. And I've described all the degrees and kinds of your corruption and your involvements. Doesn't matter what your pathetic little categories and lists say about me. Facts and logic and the truth deduced from it. And for those who have an understanding of how to discriminate good and evil, right and wrong, the proper evaluation to make of it and judgment to draw from it. But you want people who concern themselves with this sort of subject matter to kid themselves just like everybody else and tell you a pretty story and paint a pretty picture about your rose-tinted future. Well, fuck you, because that's not what you're getting. So don't even waste your time looking for it or asking for it or begging for it or whining about it. It's useless. It's not going to even change anything. How could it? You can smash all the mirrors you want all day. You're still going to be ugly. But unfortunately, because of the facts of the world, which were immediately apparent as soon as even basic issues in economic theory, which were found fraudulent, were brought up, and the machine started going into motion automatically because actually there is a serious fraud 10 times or 100 times worse than is easily detectable at first because of all the mechanisms of cognitive and ethical dissonance they have built into the social and urban infrastructures. Okay, it's just that simple. It's mind control, plain and simple. It's what it means, okay? If you don't know what mind control is, then read the military manuals on mind war and psy war. Don't bother me about conspiracy theory, nut job weirdness, because you can just go bother 4-star generals about it and go fuck yourself. This is a reality whether you like it or not, and you're a part of it, and the judgment to draw from it does not look good for you, so don't bother me with your bullshit arrogance about how I ought to think and speak or talk or judge or act on this matter. You're the ones who are in the wrong, and I've proven it. And it doesn't matter what you think or whether you like it. So with all these little tactics you're deploying, which are pathetic, you're also destroying the viability of a sustainable culture of virtue, morality for your youth. That's the size of the judgment coming down on you. So hemlock or banishment, take your pick. The consequence of continuing this path has to be a byproduct of its causes. And they do not have an ambiguous interpretation. In my efforts to go further in understanding the nature of the world, I gave good faith from the beginning for decades. Till my early 30s, before I realized this stuff cannot impinge merely upon some casual interpretation of psychosocial inertia. There's something more insidious at work. That's been discovered methodologically and soundly. And a lot of you know some of the elements that I'm talking about because you're involved in them, directly or indirectly, and I've described you. The rest are living in a dream world that was referred to in Dante's Inferno as the realm in hell where the ignavi exist. The ignoble. The base. The cowardly. You're looking the other way and you're living your life on autopilot as prescribed by going from point A to point B like you're commanded. And then from you are recruited the stock that join these stupid little gang stalking programs and counterintelligence programs and community organized policing programs and citizens on patrol programs and delusional airhead programs. You're the ones that buy into that and think that you're moving up in some kind of cryptic mystery school social ladder. And you're buying books like The Secret and believing that you're somehow manifesting your own reality and that the only people who can be screwed over by the world and are those who manifested that reality for themselves. You're assholes and you're gaslighters. You're gaslighters. Now, you're yawning, but because you're a yawning abyss. You're coughing because you have pulmonary issues which express fundamental traits of your character that are positioned to propel your soul directly into hell whenever your body ceases functioning, which guess what is going to happen? That's guaranteed. So you might not be concerned now, but guess what? You're nothing new. Where do you think every evil person in the world draws his arrogance from? Where do you think he does? From the same demiurgic response to the moral truth that flashed before its consciousness as a light, and to which it pretended and feigned that it had not happened. Treated as if it didn't exist. Pretended not to hear that voice, and then was condemned as a blind fool. That's your God. That's you. That's your consciousness. That's the way you are. That's why you participate in this crap, thinking it's glitzy and fun, especially if you might actually get some seriously, let's just say lucrative benefits from it, or